I don't consider myself too much an entrepreneur. I became one. I do not think it was in my DNA.
Let's talk about it, because there's people on this that listen to this that aren't necessarily entrepreneurs or working somewhere full time, thinking about starting their own thing.
My old college had wanted me to come back and speak to their entrepreneurs school or group a bunch of times, and I declined. And I explained, I said, I don't think you're going to like what I have to tell them, because my advice is going to be, if you want to start a business one day, spend a good amount of time working for somebody else in that space. Like, don't just like come out of school and be like, boom, I'm Zuckerberg. Like, you're not. And that'll happen again, but that's pretty rare. Learn the business side of something on someone else's dime.
Today on the New How podcast, we have Tim Wainwright with us. Tim started his cybersecurity career as an ethical hacker. I don't know what that means, but I'm sure we'll get into it. Ethical hacker here in Philly. After working for the Big Four consultancy for over 8 years, he co-founded Security Risk Advisors, or SRA, in 2010. SRA is headquartered here in Philly, and his team members are in Ireland, Australia, and the US. Tim is the CEO at SRA and focuses on growth and culture. All right, let's get into it. An ethical hacker. I love that. Talk to me what that means.
I'm glad you came back to ethical, Brian, because first of all, I want to point out that that's in air quotes, that part of it.
Ethical.
Yeah. And you might as well extend the air quotes to the hacker part too. Some of you who listen to this may only hear the audio, and so you won't get the picture, but I basically look like a less handsome version of Face from the A-Team, which is not your hacker archetype from TV. Like, I lack tattoos and cool hair. But that exists, and those are real hackers.
You're working in a basement, like with no windows, though?
I worked with no windows, but it was on the 17th floor of an accounting firm. So it's also not what you expect. But we were the real deal. We did the thing, and ethical hackers come in all shapes and sizes and backgrounds now, which has made it not only an incredibly more diverse, but a more talented a profession.
And ethical means you're finding things for companies that essentially like they didn't know existed, or you're finding gaps where they could be exploited, and you go and say, hey, I'm not exploiting you, but like there's a gap here, you should fix it.
Yeah, and the key thing about ethical is paid and authorized to do it.
Love it.
Right. So when we did this type of work, especially, and we still do it this way, but they just don't let me do it anymore because I did it 20 years ago, and the reason why I was successful was because, one, there was a really low bar. So very few people understood how this worked.
Yep.
You didn't have to be talented. You just have to be persistent, which is probably the best way to describe how I did ethical hacking.
So before we go down to hacking, because I love what your company does, I want to get back, like, how does one journey themselves to get to hacking and ethical hacking, but also like, where did you start from? How did you get into computers? Talk about the early side of what led Tim to be who he is today.
Sure. It's changed so much for how you get into this space. I got into it by begging.
Okay.
Not even joking. And I will tell that story if we have time for it. But now it's just so different as a career path, as something that you can get
Do you need
into.
a degree to do it, or is it like
less and less does anyone care?
Okay.
However,
like, is there formal training, or like, do I take a computer science can I go to school for computer science and become a ethical hacker?
You can, but the computer science degree won't teach you how.
Yeah.
It will teach you the fundamentals of how computers work, how networks work. It will give you a leg up, but to be honest, you could teach yourself that stuff at far less cost.
Go to like codeacademy.com. Who's not a paid sponsor, by the way, but for this episode, they're not a paid sponsor.
Do you have paid sponsors?
I do not. We don't need them. We do this for fun.
We could make up sponsors.
With SRA, Code Academy, and what's another good one that we throw on here?
We're just
because the algorithm and AI and ethical hacking will pick that up, and they'll see this.
Or we're supported by Manioc fake potted plants.
Manioc fake potted plants.
Yeah, they're ideal.
The Young Junk is sponsoring this, actually.
Yeah, so they're ideal for podcasting studios.
So ethical hacking, you're essentially, you're ethically, companies are saying, hey, Tim, you and your company, we want to make sure that no Russian hackers or Chinese hackers are getting into our networks and exploiting our company, right?
Yeah,
is that essentially the gist of it?
That's where it starts.
Okay.
And it's become a multifaceted domain to do cybersecurity. So when I got into it, there was little to do besides proof of concept hacking. So ethical hacking, like we talked about.
Yep.
How it's evolved is organizations have had to really develop sophisticated defenses. Because one of the things that's tricky about hacking, and I'll summarize it as in two different words that I think will be helpful for anybody who just wants a cursory understanding of the challenge of cybersecurity. There's two terms I want to introduce, and they both start with a V. There's vulnerability and there's visibility.
Gotcha.
And organizations who have good programs and robust cybersecurity programs pay attention to both of these things. Back in my day when I was hands-on keyboard doing the hacking, we were only concerned with identifying, is this organization vulnerable at the point in time that we're doing a simulated attack? Can we get into their systems? Great question to answer. And over 20 years later, that hasn't changed. That's still
there,
something
right?
that you need to know. But here's what's changed with the advent of nation-state sponsored hacking, with e-crime groups that are obviously quite. I don't need to tell anybody who's listening that they're quite successful. We all hear about that.
Yep.
Now we need to be concerned with continuously understanding whether the organization is vulnerable. Can somebody get in? But we have to assume they will.
Yep.
And sometimes that's not really the organization's fault. Sometimes it's because they use maybe third-party software or have a contractor that is untrusted, and somebody introduces a vulnerable condition that reasonably would have been really hard to prevent. So that's where these organizations, any organization, a hospital, a bank, a doctor's office, they need to move into this idea of the V, which is visibility. So this is key. If an attacker gets into our network, will we see them and be able to respond quickly? And honestly, we do a lot of the vulnerability work. But we have a lot of specialization in helping them understand that.
I jump through the wall. I'm the hacker. It's like, oh my God, am I getting shot at? You're helping these companies stop that person right in their tracks as soon as they get
Find them right away, shut them down,
Yeah.
kick them out. Yep, that's exactly it. You got it very fast.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because there's a saying I feel like I've heard in the past. It's like the companies that are hacked, they're hacked, and the ones that aren't hacked just don't know they've been hacked. Is that true?
That remains a mantra. I will say there are companies who are not presently hacked. Those are probably the ones who've been hacked before. And now they know. So now they know how to find the bad folks who get in, and they know how to expel them, and they know how to keep them out.
Now, just because something that I've been experiencing personally, and again, just to give everyone a sense, Tim runs SRAs has 300 people, right?
Yeah,
this is not Tim still in his basement in his boxers hacking ethically at night, right? Mom bringing down meatloaf. That is not this. This is a large company that's down at 17th and Market, 16th.
We're at 16th.
16th and Market near City Hall. That's helping companies all over the world protect themselves.
And we're mainly working with like Fortune 500 type companies. We work with really big companies, and then we do work with some smaller ones, but not too often. It tends to be when they have really high stakes. Like say you've got you're a healthcare tech or a health tech company or a fintech company. They may only be a 100-person company, but they're building a platform that's going to turn into something very big.
Something big, and
we'll come in and help them get ready for that
early before it becomes they're rolling out to millions.
But generally, really big organizations.
The one thing, and I'm sure others have experienced it already, but there's a lot of spoofing going on out there. Like, for example, like even my own employees are getting emails from Brian Corcadell, CEO. Hey, can you update my banking information to this to run payroll, right? Like, I'm sure you see a ton of that stuff happening. And it seems to be happening at a much more rapid pace. It's almost like it's automated in a way. Is there any way that like organizations can stop that type of stuff from happening? Or is that just the future we're currently in, where it's almost like you got to watch it's like you're walking blind, but you got to like feel for a pothole before you step into it right now. Like, talk to me about that type of.
The problem is it works.
Well,
so let me tell you about. So if you're the leader of an organization, on the first day, if not before, but really the first day is reasonable, in your onboarding training, you should tell them about Evil Brian.
I love that.
Evil Brian is going to contact you. Evil Brian is going to have a sense of urgency when he contacts you. He's going to ask you, here's the types of things he might ask you for. But the key thing is, what's out of the ordinary, and what are the ways that you actually will hear from Brian? Like, why would Brian send you a text message? And here's a real stupid one that actually still works, asking you, saying he needs a bunch of Apple cards.
That's crazy.
Like, and this is your first day. Imagine it's your first day, right? And you're like, oh crap, I guess I got to do this. So that's why it works. But even the more sophisticated ones, and the ones that are now using AI, trained voices, it's now on the first day.
That's the shit that scares the hell out of me. It really does.
So it's got to be awareness. That's why I said it's day one. And I'm not just making this up. When someone joins my organization on day one, they find out about Evil Tim. Evil Tim will contact them. Evil Tim has even contacted family members.
Wow.
if you can believe that.
I believe. I mean,
And they're like, is this your boss calling me? And it's like, so it's awareness. It begins with awareness. And one of the reasons I used voice and phone and SMS and text as an example is, no, you can't stop that. That's just the way that telecom works.
Yep.
When things are coming in properly through your email channels, there's some additional training where you can train someone to say, look at the sender.
Yep.
It says Brian, but like, what's this crazy email domain? They need to understand what that is, and what they need to do is they need to be suspicious and defensive when they're being asked for something that sounds even just a little off.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, even my younger staff sometimes it gets a little, hey, did you send me this? Like, no, like Brian will never reach out to you for that type of stuff. And I think, yeah, that's definitely a great point. Like, I don't, like, my organization of 30 people doesn't do a good enough job of like educating that evil Brian will reach out. Like, I'm
day one, turn it on, and also really reinforce the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Like the worst thing that could happen with someone responding to evil Brian is they're not sure and they feel like they're going to be called out or made fun of.
Yep.
If let's say it was you,
yep.
Let's say you did ask them to go get a sub and like an Apple gift card for some weird reason, they should say, they should ask you and you should have the culture where it's like, hey, this one was actually okay, but your head's in the right place.
Yeah.
And then they'll do it every time.
That's scary. And I got to imagine that these hackers or hacking groups have defined target lists, or are you seeing them hack the small mom and pops? And, like, I know they're extorting for major money. Like, there's a whole, I'm sure, levels to this game that these organizations are getting into. It's hurting businesses.
They are themselves businesses.
Really? Talk about that a little bit. So you're telling me, so the nation states are these small hacking groups or business? What do you mean? Talk about that a little bit.
So not nation states necessarily. Yeah. They can be. Like, for example, an interesting combination is what's happening with the North Korean government, right? Mm-hmm. So have you seen this with North Korean workers? This is fascinating. So North Koreans will actually apply for and get American jobs.
I did see that. That was in the news. That made national news.
It's actually been going on for a while, and it got discovered. It might have been 2 years ago by now, but and who knows how long before then. And people realized that what happens is they'll find someone in the States who's willing to go along with this, and they basically turn their house into a laptop farm. So now there's an address, and they'll apply for a job. They get the job because here's the weird thing: they're actually often very qualified to do the job. It's often IT work.
Yeah.
So they get the IT job. But it's remote work, of course. They have the laptop shipped to the laptop farm address, and then the person there coordinates to get set up remote access so they can come into it from where they are.
And then North Korea is working from North Korea on those laptops and working for the U.S., making stupid money compared to.
They're making stupid money, and here's the crazy thing, or here's what's kind of so brilliant about that model of business is they're drawing a great salary, going to the North Korean government.
Yeah.
They get paid what they need to continue. And for where there's talent and where there's opportunity, they may engage in hacking opportunities also. So if
now these companies are very exploited, very open.
But the worst thing that happened is they're earning a handsome American salary for North Korean programs. So that's new
level.
word. That's next level thinking about. But also the reason I brought that up is that's an example of a nation state sponsoring something that's basically e-crime. Mm-hmm. You could argue whether or not that's really criminal. I mean, they're misrepresenting themselves at the very least and not legally working at that.
In their country, it might not be,
but also potentially having nefarious, espionage type of motives and being able to get access to Fortune 500 companies. But most of the nation states, so if you talk about what's attributed to China, what's often attributed to Russia, but especially China, is really interested in intellectual property theft.
Yep.
So how can they get into an American organization?
Steal
plans that they can then build, over there, that will advance their research. And then otherwise, there's just lots of crime groups. A lot of crime groups are associated with Russia, with Ukraine, with a lot of other places like that. Just these are smart people, and this is how they make a living.
I'm sure you've had, and you're not going to say names or anything, but I'm sure you've had clients or people that have been held up for ransom, for capital.
Sure.
I heard
everybody in my space has dealt with that. Yes.
But I heard that they actually have like because you mentioned they're like separate companies. I heard they have like hotlines to like negotiating with terrorists. Like, hey, and there's companies, these insurance companies negotiate with these hacking groups to release the data.
It's a subspecialty. My firm doesn't do that type of negotiation, but we have, other brother and sister firms that we know will do
that,
that part of it.
that do that. That's wild.
It's become, and this is what I was starting to say before, it's become very, very specialized where even someone who is an offensive security professional, which is an ethical hacker, someone who's focused on doing the
Yep.
simulations, is a different specialization than those who are good at defense or good at the visibility part. And likewise, there's these other types of subspecializations because it's gotten so technical. And here's my example. Here's my example that I think will help that click. If you had a problem, if you had an earache,
Yep.
and you went to a foot doctor, they would be able to help you a little.
Yeah, of course.
But you really need to go to
yeah.
the ear doctor.
Ear nose
I got caught not knowing what that's called.
EIT or what's it?
But that foot
throat.
doctor will have a better chance of helping you than say like, you or me, because they're in the field.
Yeah.
But it's gotten really specialized that way. So not everybody, back in my day, you kind of just did everything, but it was a much smaller scope.
But now it's so niche. So let me ask you, do you think it ever stops? Is there any way to like where technology is going with like the blockchain or anything? Like, do you think this actually ends up going away someday? This issue, right?
No, it just shifts. It just shifts because the motivation for malfeasance is making money, and that's a great alliteration.
Yeah.
Like I like what I just did there.
Back in the day, they used to hold up banks, right, with gunpoint right away on the horse. You couldn't catch them. Now it's like a little different.
Anyone with the intent to commit a crime is going to find a way to monetize, and there will always be a way to monetize in cybersecurity and to take advantage of organizations. And we've already seen the shift.
Yeah.
We've seen the shift, and one of the things that we say now, and I won't get too much into it, but it's in the identity itself is where it shifted to, because a lot of the networks have become hardened. There's less network to attack on the internet. It still exists. Yep. The applications have gotten stronger, but they still have problems from time to time. And now it's the identity itself. So, Brian.crocodillos how can you use that to get into something? Just for essentially identity. Think of identity also as the front door still has a handle on it.
Yeah.
So there's always a front door. And so the industry keeps finding ways to make it harder, but then the criminals just shift to the area or the new area. And now that can be AI, now that can be other types of cloud infrastructure. They find the next way to make money.
I think the scariest thing that I've seen, I've been predicting this for a while, but the whole AI space of they call it these deep fakes, right? I've been making deep fakes ethically for real estate and virtual environments that look real, but they're actually not, right? But now you're seeing this mass adoption of these companies coming out saying, "Oh, spoof yourself." Literally, with you talking on a minute in a camera, I can start making videos of Tim talking, right? And use that for great ways to market the business or nefarious ways, like put it on a phone and send it to your wife and think you're held up ransom and hostage. Like these things are starting to happen. But I keep going back to how do we get out of this room? Is it a vicious cycle? I actually truly only think the only way out is to tie it all to a blockchain. To where that one-to-one communication, that's not Brian because it's not tied to his blockchain account.
Yeah, and that actually comes back to identity that I was talking about. How do you authenticate someone? And I think we're going to continue to see solutions that enable that, but it can be really hard to make those solutions available, compatible, whole scale, and have your digital identity be something that can interact with all of the things that you want to interact with. And I think it's going to be through AI, agentive AI, where via your personal assistants, that's where your identity and your authentication will be tied to. There's going to surely be a cryptographic part to that, but it will also fail many times before it works correctly.
And a lot of exploitation leading up to it.
Just like everything, every time. And the reason why is we will always take convenience over risk as society. We will choose that. We will say we want to use this technology. We won't say I'm okay if it gets hacked. But there's an acknowledgement that it's going to get hacked before something bad's going to go down several times before it becomes reliable and we're more comfortable with it. The online banking was that way.
All right, so let's obviously at the biggest levels, you're helping the biggest companies in the world be safe, protect. Let's talk about the entrepreneur that's starting a business, right? Am I setting up in Google or Microsoft? Am I what should I be doing to protect myself in starting a new business for any entrepreneur that wants to get going? And where am I getting my email? Am I going to Hotmail? Am I going to Yahoo? Talk about some of those basics that you could give advice to someone that might have an idea to get bigger, wants to have employees someday. Where would you tell them to start IT wise from a security protocol?
The only factor where I'll say it depends is how much you want to dive into the details yourself.
Mhm.
So if you're someone who's in a technology business and you're technically inclined, read the manual
Yeah.
on whatever you're going to implement. Maybe you're using Google, you're using Microsoft, as you said, could be something else, and configure the security, especially around the identities, especially around what's inbound,
Yeah.
around authentication. You need to use multi-factor authentication for all of the identities in your organization. There
Yeah.
may be one of you, there may be 10, there may be 300. You need to use it, and you need to use it everywhere, because if you don't, that's discoverable, and that's how a lot of small organizations get popped, as
Yeah.
we say. They had an account, they had a super account that they didn't even know about because they were counting on a third-party IT support to do it.
Yeah.
And that will get found and that will get used against you. So you have to be manic about having multi-factor authentication on all of
On
your,
every single platform.
on everything, everywhere, not just inside, not just outside, inside, everywhere.
Yeah.
Like you can't use enough of it, and that is a considerably good deterrent
Yep.
for an opportunistic attacker to move on somewhere else. So that's number one. You use Microsoft, use Google, it doesn't matter. Like the IT services from both of those providers are excellent and they work really well, and they both have comparable security controls.
Mhm.
So just don't skip that part, because if you skip that part when you're starting, you won't come back to it till you have a problem.
Yep.
So if you want to do it yourself, read the manual, and if you don't, hire someone who knows how to do it for you and ask them the right questions.
Yeah, we're our organization literally this week switched from Google to Microsoft,
Mhm.
and it's been fun. There's obviously some hiccups, and like email addresses
Mhm.
changed, and we were signing in through SSO and Google, and now it's like we gotta we're locked out of certain things. Like it's crazy. It's fun, but it's a process that I know we're reason we're doing it is because some of our clients now we have to be in Microsoft
Yeah.
because of certain security protocols for some of the work we're doing. And half my office was in it because half of the office was doing that work.
Yep.
Now we're bringing it all, so we have one cohesive, secure network, and we're not chopping it up. But yeah, it's definitely I'm learning a lot just from like the IT company that we're working with is asking questions like who do you need do you want to be able to share links externally? How are you doing it? Who are you sharing them to?
Mhm.
Like, and we're setting expiration dates on those links. Like it's just so much protocol you have to start thinking about as you become bigger. Because the bigger you are, I guess the bigger the target, and the more people can extort you for cash. I guess if they access your system.
Yep. And if it's not in your mentality to, you're standing up a new service, you're standing up a new website, you're making a change to a website, it feels like a speed bump. But when you get good at it, it's less than a speed bump.
Yep.
It's less of that. But having that mentality is what saves you
Yep.
from something that will happen later.
Mhm.
Like we're going to change something on the website and use a different WordPress plugin.
Yeah.
You got to look at that. Those things are historically riddled with problems, and now someone could take over the website. Maybe that's a minimal impact. I don't know.
Mhm.
But like you have to have it in your DNA to say, before we do something new
Yep.
on the cloud, in the cloud, on the internet, we have to do a review and make sure that we're, applying the security
Yeah.
settings.
Make sure it's vetted.
Yeah.
And that was
Or we might have a problem and then have to deal with it. Like you think about the speed bump of going through that setup, going through that checkpoint versus, oh, now we're hacked. Like, believe me, like it was worth the time
to figure it out and get
to
it
go
all.
slow over that bump. Yeah.
How did you? Let's go back to SRAs or security risk advisors.
Mhm.
Let's talk about what drove you to start that business. Like, where were you in life when back in 2010, where you're like, I'm doing it? Talk about that a little bit.
I might disappoint you a little bit because this is an entrepreneurial, theme to your. I don't consider myself too much of an entrepreneur. I became one.
Okay.
I do not think it was in my DNA.
Let's talk about it because
Yeah.
there's people on this that listen to this that aren't necessarily entrepreneurs or working
Yeah.
somewhere full time, thinking about starting their own thing.
My old college had wanted me to come back and speak to their entrepreneurs school or group or a bunch of times, and I declined. And,
Yeah.
and I explained, I said, I don't think you're going to like what I have to tell them, because my advice is going to be, if you want to start a business one day, spend a good amount of time working for somebody else in that space.
Mhm.
Like, don't just like come out of school and be like, boom, I'm Zuckerberg. Like, you're not. And that'll happen again, but that's pretty rare. Learn the business side of something on someone else's dime.
Mhm.
And that's not even what I went into. Is the reason why I became an entrepreneur is I started by completely falling in love with cybersecurity. When I went to school, there was no way to study it. There was no programs. They didn't exist. They didn't exist back then. But I found out about it during an internship. And once I found out that it was possible to be an ethical hacker, even if it was a very small field, I had to be in it.
Yeah.
So I did all the self-study. I read and I wasn't even reading books on cybersecurity. I was reading books on just how networks work.
Yeah.
I remember I would read the book and I would start over from the beginning and read the book again. because I wanted to be able to. Um, we did a lot of firewall work back then. There wasn't a lot of security besides firewalls. I was able to open like a notepad, or I could write it out, but I'd rather type. I could write a firewall configuration just by typing it. Like it wasn't like that's how well
Open up ports, close ports.
that's how well I wanted to know it,
Yeah.
and I did, because but that was my point, is that it was a passion for the subject matter. It wasn't about, oh, I need to start a company one day. It was about, I really want to be good at this because I find it fascinating. And that's my advice, is for anyone thinking about starting a business, if it's okay if you're doing it because you think one day this is going to bring me wealth or comfort or things like that, like that's okay. Just be honest that that's one of your motivations.
Yeah.
Like it's a perfectly fine motivation. It was not for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a high level practitioner. I wanted to work with top companies and solve cool problems. That's all I cared about back then. And that's why I went to one of the big four firms. It was a great place to do that. They had a great culture. I also learned culture there. I didn't just learn the business of consulting and billing by the hour and fixed fee projects and other types of fee arrangements. I did learn that because I had to do it.
But everyone's got to do that to some extent.
Yeah, but I also got really good coaching. And I wasn't an athlete, so I was. Does that come as a surprise to you? I got a chuckle there, but you're like, yeah, Tim, I know. I'm sitting across the table from you.
I stopped in 8th grade playing sports.
But a lot of young people get coaching only through athletics, and honestly, sometimes the coaching is bad. From a life perspective. I remember there was a
poisonous coaches.
I remember in our early days at SRA, we were starting to take on interns, which is we should get into, because it's a really big part of how we've grown our team. And as we were interviewing our first interns, I remember talking to this young man, and we wanted to bring him in for the 6 months, because that's what Drexel University does, and it's a great program to bring in students to really get hands-on experience and dig in. So we've been partnering with Drexel for a very long time. And I remember him coming back to me and saying, Tim, I would love to take this co-op, but I only have one more year to play soccer. And my coach said that if I'm not back in August or whatever, then I can't play. And at that point, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean,
you clearly don't love this as much as I did when I was your age, and I'm giving you an opportunity. So I'm not chastising anybody. And that guy didn't take the internship. He didn't he didn't kind of. But I got to say, that's some pretty bad life coaching, probably some decent athletic coaching. But does that coach have in mind the best interest of that student in mind
most of them
for
don't.
literally 8 months from then? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's bad coaching, even though it was athletic coaching. So I am good on athletic coaching. I think it can be really positive. I had some coaching from youth pastor type perspective stuff. Great people who were great influence in my life. But then I got to a place where professional coaching was a thing. And that is something that I have 100%, I have 150% carried that forward into SRA, as having career path, helping people who are starting as an internship, then taking their first job, and then having this be a place where they understand that they can be themselves. In fact, one of our values is it's personal. And we do that on purpose. Like our values aren't excellence and teamwork and integrity.
Those are all standard. I feel like those are standard.
I hope so, but it has to be something that talks about your organization. And there was an HBR article that helped me realize this years ago, that it's actually the founder or founders that really need to set out what the values are, because they understand how you got there. And you're maybe not writing the values in your first 2 or 3 years of doing it. We wrote ours probably 6 or 7 years in, but we knew what they were. And it's personal to us means we're going to spend so much time working together. And for people joining the organization from university or alternative, like they're coming in and they're like, okay, who are my friends here? And,
everybody.
and we're saying not only is that okay, like that's encouraged. Like if you're going to spend that much time with someone and you're going to be helping a founder build an organization, like you should all feel very comfortable. You should all be friends if you're willing to do it. Now the double edge to the sword of it's personal is sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah,
and
I feel like everybody at a certain point goes through that,
and you have to face that. And I personally, through 15 years of SRA, have had to dog food that value many times. But I embrace it. Like it's an important part of who we are. So you talked about I got way off chart.
What did I even ask?
With your question?
I love it. I mean, just early, like just,
it was getting started and becoming an entrepreneur.
But doing it for the right reasons.
Doing
it for the passion. Doing it not for the money. But doing it for wanting to work with some of the largest companies in the world and figuring out a way to get there. And it seems like in order to get there, what you also did was building a team that with the right values got you there much quicker.
Yeah.
Right. So that's big. And I think, touching on that core value piece, every entrepreneur knows it in their head when they start, but I feel like the ones that embrace that earlier on and actually, implement it sooner and actually hold to it, right? Decisions are made by it, hiring decisions, firing decisions. Like I would say within the last, 5 years of my company, and there's been times where people stay too long or whatever, but we run all of our decisions, whether it's yearly goals in the organization, as a filtering, use the core values as a filtering mechanism to make sure whether that's a good decision or not, if it aligns, right? That's, one of the things is, I recently had, a situation where, we're going over roles and responsibilities for people. Well, one person didn't make this, didn't have certain one parameter of the role that they didn't get. It was something with the licensure. I said, look, our core value is lead by example. I can't allow this
I
person to
like that.
take that role because it's setting a bad lead by example presence, saying that you don't need to get that certification to be in that position. It's not who we are. I want that person to be in that position and then be passionate about inspiring others to get there. Right. So again, I use that core value as literally a metric to say this person can't be in that role, at least in my organization. Doesn't mean that they're
Yeah.
not fit or qualified. It's just they're not qualified yet because they don't have this piece that's very important for being a true.
Yeah. That's strong. That's strong, Brian.
And that's
I think
challenging for a lot.
I think that's a really important part about your core values. If you can't use them in a sentence and a situation and have them stand out when you do, then they're probably not very good.
Correct.
And that's where excellence and integrity. It's like, hey, you're not having integrity here in this. Can you imagine saying that to somebody? Like, and that's not our core value. Like that's a different conversation.
I will tell you, one of our core values is honesty and integrity. And
I
matters.
got you.
You did get me, but it matters more from the standpoint of we will give it to you honestly. Like you might not like what we have to say about what you're trying to do, but also it aligns because like in my profession, in yours, there's some bad actors. Like there's people that try to cut corners. There's people that try to do stuff. So we need to make it very clear. Like we're not going to play this fucking games. I've fired clients because they're doing things that I just don't feel comfortable with long-term being part of that.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't mean that they're doing anything wrong necessarily, but just something I'm not putting my team to be involved with because it doesn't match who my people are.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge, especially building a business. You're like, I need every dollar. I need that contract. This long-term, it has drastic, devastating effects on your business.
Absolutely.
The longer you let it go.
I'm not decrying integrity as implicit in your values. What I'm saying is they become really memorable if you come up with your own phrasing for the things that you want.
We never settle. That's one of ours.
Yeah, that's good.
We like that.
I like that.
That's like we did it. It was not fucking good enough. How can we do it better?
Yeah, that's great.
And that's our number one driver because every one of and it becomes a culture thing. Like shit, yeah, we got that template done for that. Like it could be better. We could do this. And that level of thinking of what makes the best work happen.
Yeah. We have another that I really love. I would say it's probably everyone's second favorite. Almost everyone's favorite is it's personal because they have their own story for that. But one of ours is level up.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen that a couple times since, but I swear we didn't see it anywhere else because it also had, if you can imagine, a lot of the people who want to join an organization like mine, they're gamers and like they understand the video game connotations of that. Even in our old office, every single conference room was Super Mario themed.
That's cool.
And I wish we carried it over. We have a much lamer theme now. Rebecca, if you're listening, that's your fault.
You got to bring Mario back into the office.
Yeah, I really like that. But the idea of level up, and imagine you're a college student or a career changer coming into my organization, and you're joining the security operations team, and you're looking around you and saying, "Oh my gosh, everybody knows more than I do." I had a few ideas, but how do I get here? Hey, level up, be in the battle, be in the battle in the video game. And when that round is over, literally your level has gone up and you have built, I want them to feel and know they have built experience at every encounter that makes them better prepared for the next thing. So it's like that gamification concept of like, now you're strong. And imagine after 5 years, like you are an incredibly highly leveled, playable character in this game.
So let's relate that a little bit. So you're the Super Mario that grabbed the star and is glistening up there, right? You're CEO of this 300-person SRA headquartered. You're working in Australia, Ireland. You got employees all over the globe. Now let's dive into how you got that star. I want to talk to you, give the listeners a little bit like, what are your habits as a high functioning entrepreneur? Like, what do you do to like calm down? What do you do to like get better? Like talk a little bit about some of the habits that have shaped you over the last Now, for you, 16 years building
Yeah.
SRA, what are some of the habits that you maybe started with, or you wish you like, shit, I wish I started doing that 5 years earlier than I
Mm.
did? Give some insight to some of that stuff.
When you start, you're going to do a lot. You're going to do a little or a lot of everything. And even when you start, there are probably things that you should tap out of and not do yourself, even from the beginning.
Yep.
For me, a lot of it was like financial stuff, accounting type things.
Uncle.
Like I would have spent so much time doing that on the weekends when I should be relaxing. But even if I felt and getting restored, and even if I felt that I needed to work more,
Mhm.
I would have been working on the wrong thing
Correct.
because of the output that I would have got. Thankfully, even from the beginning, there were a few things, and I started the organization with 4 people.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into it solo. And I also recommend that because
Solo or with people?
with people,
Okay.
you have to have the people that are really worth doing it with, who are going to carry their weight and know who's going to do what. But you're linking arms and you're in it together. And so if it gets rough, it's not.
Not by yourself.
You'll go through it together. It's not just by yourself. And you would have other types of outside personal support, but that was good for me. Some people start with one partner, but we were 4 that went out, and so there were some relative strengths among us. And so even for some of the administrative stuff that you do need to do, other people were able to take that. And I've very much extended that throughout the close to 15 years of doing this, where I've noted when I'm doing something that someone else could do,
Yep.
probably better. But even if it's not quite as good, if I hand it to them, they will get better. Because I don't believe I'm the most talented person in the organization by a long shot at actually anything that we do. So if you really believe, and people talk about not wanting to be the smartest person in the room, for me, it's never been a problem because I've never had any doubts about it. But like I've always been wanting to pass things on. And further, in one of the talks that I have with anyone who it becomes a manager and then they become a senior manager in my organization, and they may want to eventually become a director, I say the most common trait of being a director, which is the most senior leadership in the organization, the most common trait of being a director is you will always be building something and handing it to somebody else. So that means if you're building an area in the business, it could be a technology capability, it could be a new service, it could be client relationships that become very fruitful. You'll know you're thinking like a director if you're planning to hand that to someone else
You're building
and then go
to
do the
do
next
that.
thing, because you're not worried about your identity in the
Correct.
organization. People know you're valuable at that point, and you have to be comfortable with that. You should be handing that to someone else. And so I think that's an evolved principle that came with only work on the things where once you start to add people, only work on the things that you uniquely still have to, and that will also create work-life balance for you. Because if you're going to go the long haul, it has to be sustainable. And if you're going to start careers, and I've seen this where we've hired people from Penn State or Drexel or something going back, and now we do a lot of hiring at RIT up in Rochester. It's a fantastic school with a good curriculum. I go there myself.
Shout out to RIT. Shout
out to RIT. No, I'm pretty sure we sponsor a lot of their stuff. So, where's I going with that? So we'll hire these students and come in and we'll watch them be in their early 20s, trying to get comfortable, trying to level up and get to that point and get good at something, and then start to get good at it, and then start to mentor others, and just watch this whole progression.
What trait? So the trait about a director. How do you identify? I'm just curious. Management qualities in people in your office, right? 300 employees. Like I'm sure at this point you're like, that person's got potential. Like that person I could see running a team here. What do you as a leader? What certain characteristics do you look at and see in a person? Or it could be like, are they leading a lunch talk? Like, are they bringing people together for lunch? Like, talk about that a little bit.
In the early stages of a company, it's pure osmosis because you haven't written any of it down.
Yep.
So if you're modeling good leadership and you see other people start to do it, you're like, oh, they understand what this is about, and they're a natural for it.
Yep.
Then as you get more mature as an organization and you've written your systems down, you have mentorship programs, you have formal coaching, you have all the reviews, you see who embraces that. Right. And if they don't, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be a leader either, but they at least understand the system of what you've put in place. What you're trying to make systematic because you're scaling an organization. And then there's kind of up and beyond behaviors. One of the things that I do that I make time for, I don't work a lot on the weekends, but I do sometimes. And when I work on the weekends, one of the things that I will often do is spend usually about an hour going through that week's feedback. So we have a 365-degree feedback program that is weekly.
Really?
And
Whoa.
every week,
Weekly? So you're talking about 360 for all the staff?
everybody can submit feedback on anybody for anything
What?
all week. It's not required.
No.
It's highly encouraged. So but this is how leadership can step in and show how important it is. And how I also understand, to those listening, who's taking the feedback program seriously.
I just want to pause on this. So for example, if I'm a manager in your organization, I could be like, Sally crushed this week. She put in extra effort, worked till midnight to get that project done. A+. Submit.
Not only that, you nailed it. You nailed it in a way you don't know, because one of the ratings is literally crushing it.
I love that. And then Sally could be like, fucking manager made me work till midnight. It was like short. He gave me no notice. Da da da. Blah da da.
Yep.
B-.
Yep. Or we have crushing it. We have develop a strength, focus and strengthen. We have develop a goal. There's 3 or 4 ratings there.
Is there a software you use to do that? Or
we do, and we switched.
You want to shout out that one?
We switched it several times. I will shout it out as long as I remember which one we're on, because we've actually shifted a few times. The one we're using now is called Lattice.
Lattice,
Lattice, and the joke is you throw some lettuce at somebody.
Throw some lettuce at somebody.
Throw some lettuce. Oh, I love what you did. I'll throw you some lettuce. But
cool.
We've used some in the past. I just feel like some of these companies that write the feedback software have a hard time staying in business.
Well, the feedback, we use something similar. We use something called Bonusly, which is we do it by core values. So like someone's crushing it, but again, we want people to tie it to core values in our organization. So like, wow, this person like led by example. They did something that was like, everyone take note. Like, this is what you need to be doing. Then they get points. So all the employees get points. They can give it out every month.
Oh, that's cool.
So like, then you can take those points, you spend it on shit. So like, I have employees that'll get points. They'll buy like REI gift cards or Amex gift cards to like.
Oh, I think my team would like that. But bear in mind, I work in a company of hackers and incident responders. So they would 100% figure out how to exploit that badly.
Yeah, you'd be like Tim, be like, I'm out of money this month. P&L is negative.
Well, ours is tied to values too. So if you're giving somebody feedback, you're selecting which value. Maybe it's personal. Maybe it was the less under one of my favorites is punch above your weight. You pick the punch above your weight value, and then you explain what they did. But my point about it is, and this is the behavior, you see the people in the organization who understand how important that is. And as a leader, you also understand that constructive feedback and even negative feedback is viewed extremely positively.
Yeah.
That like, wow, someone is helping this person grow. And no one's getting miffed about this. And of course, there's good techniques to say, here's a really positive piece of feedback that's couching one that's like, you need to improve. But here's the last thing I'll say about it is, I read that feedback every week.
I love that.
I don't, sometimes I read one where it's like, hey, Austin helped me fix my computer. You're crushing it. I'm like, well, it's Austin's job.
Yeah, but Austin.
He's good.
But he did it really good.
He's good. Literally, we have 2 Austins that do that, and they're both good. But that's not the one I'm looking for necessarily. I am looking for that one that's above and beyond. And Katie, our chief human resources officer, she pre-scans all this stuff, and she even color codes it to make it easier to read. Nonetheless, I read it all. But I have a rule. Every time I go, and there's about anywhere between 80 and 100 feedback pieces every week.
That's amazing. For me to skim. You got a third, or some putting multiple in, or is it like, what's the engagement from the office? 30%?
It's higher. 20%? It's higher than that.
Okay.
It's higher than that because we actually also track if someone's not, especially if they're a manager who's not giving feedback. We're like, hey, you need to get feedback. It doesn't have to be every week, but you need to let the team know how they're doing.
Then you use that for reviews and stuff and all.
It does go into reviews. In fact, when someone's writing their own self-assessment, they'll pick their favorite feedback pieces. They'll put it in. But here's how it helps me as a leader in the organization, because I don't work with everyone who's 24 years old. I might play Super Smash Brothers with them on Thursdays, which I'm better than I should be at, or I might play ping pong, which I'm also quite good at, but we don't necessarily work together. But it helps me understand it's a pulse on the organization. I'm seeing who's happy, who's working together. But here's my number one rule when I go through the feedback. 2 things. We do have a lot of people joining, 300 people. You can know 300 people, but we had so many people join this summer. I don't know them all. So I also do it with the employee directory open. And if I see someone getting feedback and I don't know I can't picture their face when I'm reading it, I see their face.
Yep.
So now I do a better job. And
then
you
can go up to that voice. Hey, I heard you crushed it last week.
I can, and that gets.
And they're probably like looking at you like, how do you know that?
Yeah. Well, that gets into my second thing. I never allow myself to read a set of feedback without doing one thing as a result. It's often thanking somebody.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll do several, but I cannot get through that without thanking at least one person.
Awesome.
So that gets through the organization. Like, hey, did you know Tim and some of the other senior leaders read this stuff and they actually like care about what we're, yes, we do a lot. It's not a gimmick. Like,
put it in.
It's valuable for everybody.
Yeah. I think that's That's impact. That's also back to your values and just time. That's why you're running a 300-person company. I mean, it's you have to care for. I guess that's another advice to someone starting. Like, you actually have to give a shit about the team you're
Absolutely.
building. If you don't care about your team, what are you doing it for? Like, why have a team?
Yeah.
Right? People's livelihoods are at your fingertips, right? Like, you need to be able to give them an environment to grow
Yeah.
and because if not, why are you an entrepreneur? Why are you doing it?
And your golden question, I want to come right back to that. Why are you an entrepreneur?
Mhm.
I became an entrepreneur because I really cared about the subject matter. I
Yep.
really cared about cybersecurity. But that's allowed to change over time.
Mhm.
I think cybersecurity is cool. Like it went from COOL to KEWL to
Yeah.
me. No, and that's not sarcastic. I actually still think it's kind of
I
cool.
like architecture too. I think architecture is cool.
Yeah.
COOL, but it's cool. But
It's not,
don't
it's
do
not
it.
it's not the reason I'm
Yeah.
not doing this because cybersecurity is the end all be all to me. It really has become about the people.
Yep.
And I've realized that I want my mark to have been, and I've seen a lot of senior leaders in my space. Saw one of them yesterday at a conference I was at in Toronto, and reminded him the impact he had on me of like helping other people's careers
Mhm.
along. Like you have to find like your reason to do it, and that reason to do it probably changes every 5 years you do it.
Mhm.
And so I really think it's only been in the last 5 years where I realized starting careers and giving other people an at bat into this space. I want more people in this space, but I don't want them to have to beg like I did.
Mhm.
I did beg because there was nobody who did it. I found out it existed and I just, please let me have this role. Please let me have this role. And they finally let me do it and get started and I thrived in it.
Mhm.
I want more people in this space who want to be in it. And I don't want it to be so hard for them to get into it. Now they have to put the work in. They have to be
Yeah,
good
of
at it.
course.
But that's my assumption is they're going to have the passion. So
What's
now it's about the people.
just back to like the spaces. Yeah, talked about degree. Like, do I need to like am I taking coding lessons, Python? Like what type of like coding is your team doing? Right? Like
Yeah.
what's the computer, language that your guys are speaking in
Great
most?
question. You mentioned Python and it's Python.
It's Python. Okay.
Python is still super useful.
Yep.
And a lot of, there's a move to use automation and AI, of course,
Yep.
but automation is powered by Python
Correct.
most of the time, right? So even if you're using automation building tools that are more graphical, just
Mhm.
like a lot of programming gets abstracted,
Yep.
under the hood, a lot of
It's
it's
all Python.
Python.
Okay.
And there's some other types of scripting languages that are related, like Microsoft has its KQL, which is a
Yep.
very useful skill to know. And it's not all very, not, it's not terribly different from each other. So having this type of scripting skills is very useful. Obviously, when it's AI augmented, it just makes you more powerful at
Yep.
it. But it's not yet a waste of time to like spend time saying I know how to write Python scripts. Like that's highly employable stuff.
Yep.
And some of it is, and this is, I read an AI newsletter by Daniel Miessler called Unsupervised Learning, and
Mhm.
that's a shout out. I highly recommend it. This guy does a great
Unsupervised learning.
unsupervised
Daniel.
learning. Daniel Miessler.
Okay.
And it's great, and I became one of his members because he should be paid to put together the stuff that he does. But one of his recommendations is, especially people talk about this AI world, like what's going to happen to these white collar jobs, and one of his theses is be very human.
Yeah.
So
Oh
so
my
so
God.
so, so be very human.
Wow.
Be a human, and this is how it translates to cybersecurity for me. If the job you had is just being off in a corner, not interacting with anybody, start to learn those skills
Correct.
because your technical skills aren't obsolete. Like your technical skills bring you a seat at the table. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a salesperson or a business development person in
Yep.
cybersecurity. That's extreme. But being someone who wants to teach and explain
Mhm.
and have relationships with your clients, you don't have to be like a megastar at it, but you should be moving in that direction
Yeah.
for your own good, for your
But
own
I mean,
skills.
we talk about it internally in my office. The reason most people struggle to move up has to do with those soft
Yeah.
skills. I mean, literally, it's you got to be comfortable in a room. You have to be comfortable talking or telling someone that they did something wrong in a nice way. Like those skills are so
Yeah.
undervalued by people. It's staggering. But the ones that are doing at the highest levels have those skills and are improving those skills. Being able to walk in a room and be like, "That's great, you're wrong," like, but comfortable enough to have like those types of conversations is what's making or breaking true leaders.
Agree.
If you can't manage a team and you have someone on your team that you're managing, you're like afraid to go like tell them they did something wrong. How are you a manager, a good manager to now you're hurting employees around you,
Yeah.
not helping.
And someone with high potential will realize they're being hurt by that.
Yeah.
They'll be like, I'm not getting good, what we're saying earlier, I'm not getting good coaching here.
Mhm. Exactly. And that's great advice. Um what else should I know about Tim or should the world know about Tim? Like, where are you heading next? You got a 300 person security company. Is SRA going to be who the standard for ethical hacking and helping, organizations protect themselves? Like, and we're going to see like the little SRA shield on the bottom of companies that like, I'm SRA protected.
The first thing I want to point out is we would never use a shield.
Even like a Zelda shield, like
It's just so highly cliched
yeah.
in the
You want to be
industry.
like Norton antivirus?
We absolutely don't want to be that. No. So here's some rules. No shields.
All right.
No swords.
All right.
No critters. We're
How
done
about
with
like
the
a
critters.
Spartan helm? Like you're going to war.
Been done so many
Okay.
times. All of the things you're going to think about, like, this is cool, it's aggressive, it's offense, defense. All that iconography is a huge eye roll to us. We will never do any of that.
How about like a thieving mask? Like you're like the ninja in these networks.
You're just like, it's almost like you're using
what is your
AI.
logo?
It's just like you're using AI to generate security stereotypes right now.
After when I get done, I'm going to ChatGPT. I'm gonna be like, give me some SRA logos, new logos. What is your logo? Do you have one?
We just have we do. I mean, you go to the website and see what we have there. It just says security risk advisors. And I joke that we were so bad at naming the organization, but back when we needed to name the organization, we had a choice. We could say, well, we could name the organization something cool, but nobody will know what the hell we do.
Yep.
Or we can name something that's exactly what we do, and there will be no doubt about it. And there were other cool companies. There are other companies that were great companies that were already out there that had cool names.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one that still exists called Rapid7, and we were just like, that's a cool name, but like, what is that? Like how would you know what that is? And they had to do all the marketing to like make that happen. So we did that, but we did do another thing. We have a project called Vector that's a free platform, and it's been really important for us to make this a free cybersecurity platform that teams all over the planet use, which is really cool because we've had it out there for about 8 years. But that's a cooler one to check out, I think, for iconography, because we had an idea to have like a spaceship, and it's like an asteroids theme.
Okay.
So that's cool. To me, that's a good example of something that we did that was original. It was our idea, and we used a third-party firm to do the graphics. We like told them what it was, and they were like, "Huh?" But then they came back with, we're like, "Yeah, that's what we wanted."
Yeah.
So it can be done. Original can be done, but just like most organizations, there's cliches, and then everybody for some reason thinks like, oh, but our logo is a dog. No one's done that before. And it's like, done a lot of times. Like,
so next steps for SRA, 300 people. Are you continuing to grow? Are you setting up in other countries? Are you, what's kind of your forecast for the next 5 years for where you're taking the organization?
I'm glad you said
you've done a hell of a lot in 16 years.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad you said 5 years, because I would encourage entrepreneurs and anyone who's thinking about the next step of your career is you should be thinking about, what do I want to be doing in 5 years? What do I want to be doing in 10 years? And you may not need to have all the answers, but if there's things that need to be crossed off the list, you should know those. You should know those too. Like, how do I want my career to grow? Do I still see myself in the same place in 5 years? So I do see myself in the same place at 5 years, and I see myself growing a team, but you also then need to think about, like, what are the actions that are going to get us there.
I say that's also probably relative for employees too. People that are listening, like,
that's what I'm saying. It's both.
I mean, what's staggering, and I don't know if you experience the same thing, but when I go talk to an employee, I go, well, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
It's probably less than 15% that give me a solid answer.
Because no one's ever asked them that question.
It's hard. It's hard for people to predict what they want to do, but the actions today make the next 5 or 10 or 30 years of your life. And I think that's something that they don't preach enough for people to really just, it's like most people are taught, like, what does Friday look like?
Yeah.
Like Friday? Like, that's the old way of thinking. You can't, I mean, I guess it's not an old way of thinking, but like most people, I'd say 99% of the populace, what are we doing Friday?
Yeah.
But imagine if you're like, what am I doing in 2028?
Yeah. No, for sure. But you should ask everybody that question. And one of the things that I tell my team at least twice a year, and I do monthly, what we call monthly progress update, where I talk to the team, in theory, 12 times a year, but we wind up collapsing maybe 2 of them. So at least 10 times a year.
Yep.
It's either a half hour or a full hour session. And in one of those 10 sessions, I directly address, why are we still growing? Because there's people who've been in the organization for 12 years now. When we first started hiring interns, and they're still finding growth and purpose and the next step for them. Why are we still growing? And this is, I know why I am still growing, but your reasons may be different. Your reasons for growing if you're listening and your company is 3 years in, is it may be because we need to be more profitable, or we want to, have a bigger top line so we can invest and get into a different area. Like you may have your own answer for that, but know what it is. At this point for me, why are we still growing? Is that the people have become so important to me in the leadership team is we have to grow so that everybody who wants to can stay. Because if we've hired someone 10 years ago and they met a few friends who maybe they went to the same school, maybe they didn't, but they're a starting class, if you will, and they're all 22, 23, trying to meet a partner, or just dating, and they're going to clubs and they're going to, I don't know, wherever you go, like an ultimate frisbee game.
Yeah, you go play F1 driving.
My point is their life changes. They come in and say, all I ever want to do is be an ethical hacker for the rest of my life. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, let's see where that goes. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong about that. And then they meet someone, they start a family, and then they're going to like each other's kids' picnic stuff, and they're in a different phase and they're still in it together. And then as friends and as colleagues, and then 5 years in, they're like, maybe I want to manage people. I never thought I would say that. Yep. And I'm not like, hey, I told you so. But I'm like, I say I thought that might happen. But you know what? That job has to be here for you. And so we need to keep growing as an organization so that your next job is here. And that's what I tell them twice a year. My goal is that your next job is here if you want to have it. And if you ever decide you want to go, we're going to be very, very cool. Like there's a couple of competitors I'd prefer you not go to. That would annoy me, but I'm still not going to dislike you as a person.
Yeah, of course.
So to me, that's my why for growth. And I want the legacy of my organization. This became my personal goal only about 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. But I gradually let it be the organization's goal because I didn't want to scare the crap out of them at the onset. Because there's a lot of people who they've been with us all that time, and we were maybe 20 or 30 people when they joined, and they're like, that was cool, and it was only 20, 30 people, and now I don't know everybody. And I'm like, yeah, you should make an effort to get to know everybody. Like that's on you. We're growing, and you're moving up, you're getting promotions, you have the next job here. You have to understand that like other people are in your toe.
Correct.
So a couple things. One, this is what I tell people who've been here for 10 years if they haven't realized it. Your career is not entirely about you anymore.
Yep.
Like, I know it's always been the you show, like what's my next promo? And that's been fine, but like, it's not all about you anymore. There's people who want to be you. There's people who need your tutoring and coaching the same way that you were tutored and coached. And that's a big part of your job now.
That's a big mental shift.
Yeah.
And I think as
remote work makes it tough too, but we get there.
Yep. Tim, give me the last lick of one piece of advice. And it doesn't have to be business advice. It could be something that you've learned over the years and personal or anything, of just a mantra that you stick by that's helped you continue to grow as a human being.
I'd like to give you something really big, but I'll give you something I think is a little bit tactical.
Yeah.
Never ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself.
Fair. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. At any level in your organization. Like if you couldn't see yourself doing that when you were in their shoes, for whatever reason, it's menial, it's boring, it's not helping them grow. Like, don't ask them to do it.
I go over one of the things I do. This is funny. I got this from one of my other mentors that talked to me, but I go over, like, I'll do the dishes in my office, right? 32 people. So like the people got coffee. But when I do dishes, I'm fucking loud. I fucking clank them. I throw them in the dishwasher, clank, clank, just to make a point. So people are like, wow, Brian, like he's doing the dishes. Like that matters.
Brian's doing the dishes and he wants us to all know about it.
Well, but again, it's just reinforcing, like I'm willing to do anything.
It's a great example. Same idea. Same idea.
But just make sure you clank the dishes so that people know it's happening. Well, Tim, thank you for coming on the podcast. Can't thank you enough. Ton of nuggets for people listening. Hopefully Tim doesn't hack your website or your business or find those loopholes. But if you do have loopholes in your business, I'm sure Tim and his company are able to help you out of it and guide you to that next level.
Sure.
Protect yourself.
Sure.
Out
Thanks, Brian. And I'll say, I know we spent probably more time talking about actual cybersecurity. Yeah. If there's a way for when this gets published for people to understand, like, hey, if this is boring to you at first, if you skip halfway through, we actually talk about business and entrepreneurialism and taking care of people. So, it's kind of in two halves.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, and excited to see where SRA is in another 16 years.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks, Brian.